Hi, thank you all for coming. Really nice to see you all here. I'm just going to read a few poems. First, from my book, Little Climates. One of my favorite things about reading from it is when I hold it open, you can see it's mirrored front and back, but just from the front, you don't see the surprise. Night Passage. Mornings I used to see in the bent grass the shape of a bed where one deer nestled down at night. For a year I lived beside only absence, the ghostly depression of animal sleep. Spring and his antlers lost tufts of fur, while my teeth tried to grow in straight, wet monuments to precision. After the era of alkaline blood, I kept myself behind locked doors and learned to mummify my body with blankets, preparing for the salt diet. Later still, I saw the bed of the buck thinning, witch grass, finally rising after so many months of tamping down. His disappearance as unexplained as his arrival, while my own presence became more silhouette than solid. Between him and me, a sightless understanding that existence could be willed away at a whim by rain or high wind. Hush. In these green hills, there's no longer time for sleeping, for condolence notes. Like a face, the sky looks back with longing. Another life holding ice in my mouth, another life leaving my body out to be burned by the sun. I had a lover once with the eyes of a monster, blue as a flood. I felt the water lapping at my door. I had a horse once with the buck and gallop of a stallion that I led carefully to graze on the cliffs above the Pacific. Twilight arrives and I tremble. Doubt sleeps among the stars, tucked neatly into rows of twin beds. This evening could go on forever, like the plastic cord of a telephone wire I used to wind around my wrist as I listened to your voice, a miracle echoing out of the dark. Tonight I am witness to misshapen things, the coast live oak growing coiled in our yard. When the night decides, I won't see them anymore, shielded by ghosts in shadow. Only then do I want to stay close to you, like animals in a wet field, huddling a while, saying each other's names. And I'll just read two more newer poems. I texted Elizabeth to get a vibe check for tonight, and I said sexy poems or grief poems, and she said sexy poems. Edendale. Laundry whirls in the machine while homes burn from brush fire and smoke shades the hillside into darkness. A dog I haven't seen barks in the neighbor's apartment until evening when the sun sets unseen behind smog and ash and the dog switches to terrible howling. Round valves burning through walls louder and louder until they seem to lose their center, until someone could mistake them for laughter, maybe. If you could go back in time, would you want to? My ex-lover asked me once in a dream while he held a tumbler of milk that clicked with ice cubes. Someone told me once that the Pacific is flooded with gold, floating out there impossible to extract from the seawater, glimmering without touch. Unlike the Los Angeles road map that finds me lonely at the flea market. The map is evidence of places that I know no longer exist. The paper greased by fingers and torn, an address that is meaningless to me, circled carelessly in green ink. If I drove there to 1081 Edendale Drive, would the house I imagine still stand? A single-story rancher the color of a linen dress? Or would I find only vacant lot, a past lost to foreclosure, walls pocked and split by stones, the empty home of a family who once left in such a rush? They cruelly discarded their starving, barking dog. I have abandoned things. Broken plates, stained clothes, gifts I never wanted, the voicemail from him I listened to over and over, a loop of rage and grilled chicken that I repeated each day until it became another language, until I could listen no more. And I will keep abandoning. Watch how easily I pull out my own hair from the brush, strands brittle and blonde in this light. How softly this old hair falls outside my window, catches the breeze a little, and I don't know where it will go except away from me, drifting toward a dove's nest or sewer opening or the side of the freeway piled up with the trash. At every window in this city, people linger, thinking of minutes they want to think of no longer, and each face blazes with the dream of abandoned, falling things. This will be my last poem, and I just want to say thank you so much to Zibby's for having me, and to all of the amazing readers, Doug, Elizabeth, Natasha. It's so fun to all be together, and thank you all again. This last poem is inspired by the red tide, a phenomenon that you here might have experienced. So it starts with a little quote from the LA Times: "Neon blue flash gives way to rotting stenches. Red tide sweeps California coast." If you missed it last time it was here, it will be back. Red tide. Western wind violates the streets, twists the city into violent trapeze. A hot spell, the sun a long vowel algae blooms under, a red velvet dress on the sea. I smell it even indoors. From Baja to Malibu, thousands gather to watch the waves at night, crashing like lightning over the shore. Once, in a desire to think no more, I split my arm to see inside. A hot river with pulse swelled, a red nativity. The red bloom gives way at night to bioluminescent blue, waves outlined in neon light. You hold me as we watch their electric tumbling. My linen dress drifts away from me like a kind of speaking. Once a high tide rose inside my body, valves and veins on fire, blood on the sheets, blood staining my clothes. Saline and iron sick, my possible daughters were sleek fish plucked out of water, stolen without air. As I listen to the ocean fold over, I wonder what would happen if I drank the icy water, salt in my throat. This month I haven't bled again, thin as copper stolen from a piano. Once on a street in a different city, I walked each day by a house with a rounded door painted red. I dreamed of entering it and who I would be if I lived there. Children noisy, their coats on the floor. In super bloom, life for algae is fleeting. They die splotchy freckles on the surface and are perilous to the yearling fish, caught in airless surrender, their bodies tumbled, floating in the surge. Once, in what felt like a dream, the body was an oyster abandoned of its shell, slick and briny. My mind searched for the pearl, the mantle's iridescent nacre in the flooded bedroom. Robeless, I tremored in the flux, fleshy and shucked. The palms unfurl their long fronds on the lawn of the sea. We sweat, blue waves crash restless before us. I am vulnerable as grass, bent backwards in the deep spell, ribbons gone loose in my hair. The water flashes neon, then nothing, leaving us shivering on the sand. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you all for being here. I'm Natasha, and thank you, Metzger, for organizing this in Zibby. It's great to be here with all of you. That was so good. I'm just going to read a few poems from the book, and I can't find my normal dog-eared copy, so bear with me as I try to figure out where my poems are. Okay, this first one is called What It Was Like. We had sushi that was so fresh, we blushed. Every 17 years, the cicadas rasped a kind of warning, showed us with increasing urgency the need to leave our old bodies behind. I thought I could make some kind of difference. I thought I could memorize enough facts to stay composed in debates and not cry after one glass of wine when my brother says we can all just go to Mars. I thought what I did was forgivable in the grand scheme of things, that your love was an inexhaustible resource. Terrible people made terrible decisions. Good people made terrible decisions. Which was I? It depended on the color of light in the bathroom, the angle at which I held my face to the mirror. I lived in a city at sea level-headed now, the frailty underfoot. We pretended not to notice. We loved receiving shipments to our home, ceremoniously slashing packages with scissors, cleaving, leaving nothing but confetti. It was like sitting across from you at dinner and wondering when to tell you, knowing the worst is coming and simply ordering another drink. Meanwhile, the bubbles in the glass keep rising. It was luxurious. It was inevitable. It was a thick piece of fatty tuna, brimming with mercury, somehow effortless to swallow. This next poem is called Divine Transformation. Watching Jane Nunn's sweep peacock feathers across the earth, I wanted to become one of them. I was pupil, shifting in the uniform of my larval skin. The nuns practiced ultimate nonviolence, brushing the floor with falling feathers, cotton broom, unbleached wool to avoid bruising any insect. It was, to me, an obvious way to live. Before I saw myself as small, inelastic, I was large with guilt. Why girl? Why not mouse, moth? My mother asked, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And I said, "Barefoot, forest floor, fostering compassion, wearing a muslin cloth over my mouth to avoid swallowing some winged thing." I didn't auspicate the apartment in Brooklyn, sponging blood from mosquitoes off my wall. Could not imagine I would cultivate a new cruelty, not just obvious roach spray and rat trap, but killing the unobjectionable, gnats and fruit flies who inhabit this arbitrary world for just a breath. Last week I ate exclusively the unborn, salmon roe and quail egg in one luscious bite. The distance between what I thought I was and what I am grows. I could have been a kind of fly. I could have been kind. Let's see. Okay, I'll do this one. This is called Fullness and Hunger. My father orders the crab croquet, and I am quick to correct croquette for the white waiter pouring water coquettishly. Last summer in England, I watched my brother grip a mallet on the manicured lawn of his new life, while my parents learned the rules to this ballet, beaming, and I sipped gin. My father's face when he hit the ball through the wicket. My father's face now, the slipped grin. My father's face in my face. I can be wicked, I begin to say, but it sounds like crickets. It sounds like nothing at all, though both our mouths are moving. Okay, let's see. This is where I'm lost in the book. Okay, yeah, I'll do this poem, which is called Or. And I wrote it after one of Nicole Seeley's poems called And, in which every single word in the poem has the word and inside of it, which I thought was so brilliant, so I tried my version, which isn't quite as Nicole Seeley-esque, but it has or in all the words. Or. Forgive earthworms for contorting. Prioritize forests before work or glory. Worship dormice. Forsake ordinariness. Forget conformity. Gorge words euphorically. Stories immortalize orgasm, horseflies, floral histories. Workshop emperors or gladiators rigorously. Explore discomfort, remorseless scorpions or forbidden seafloors. Reforest, dechlorinate, evaporate fluorescence. Memorize aphorisms before performing thunderstorms unforgettably. Endeavor for gorgeous, borderless worlds, multicolored, unanchored orchestras. Orbit memorably. And I'll do two more. Okay, this poem is called Old Growth. Backward crossovers into years before, airy afternoons licking the wooden spoon, pouring soft blades of grass from a shoe, always miss my mother. I wish I could remember the gentle lilt of my brother's early voice. Instead, I hear clearly the dripping of a basalt fountain. What gets saved? My father fed my sick goldfish a frozen pea, and it lived for another 6 years. Outside, pears swathed in socks ripened, protected from birds. Those bulbous, multicolored days, I felt safe before I knew the word for it. But how to fossilize a feeling, sustain it in amber? I keep dreaming in reverse until I reach a quiet expanse of forest. The dragonflies are large and prehistoric. Mother watches from a distance as I move wildly, without fear. And the last poem I'll read is called In My Next Life, Let Me Be a Tomato. In my next life, let me be a tomato, lusting and unafraid. In this bipedal incarnation, I have always been scared of my own ripening, mother standing outside the fitting room door. I only become bright after Bloody Marys, only whole in New Jersey summers where beefsteaks like baubles sag in the yard, where we pass down heirlooms in thin paper envelopes, and I tend barefoot to a garden that snakes with desire, unashamed to coil and spread. Cherry falls, brandy wine, sweet aperitif. I kneel with a spool, staking and tying, checking each morning after last night's thunderstorm, only to find more sprawl. The tomatoes have no fear of wind and water. They gain power from the lightning, while I, in this version of life, retreat in bed to wither. In this life, rabbits are afraid of my clumsy gait. In the next, let them come willingly to nibble my lowest limbs, my outstretched arm always offering something sweet. I want to return from reincarnation's spin covered in dirt and buds. I want to be unabashed, audacious, to gobble space, to blush deeper each day in the sun, knowing I'll end up in an eager mouth. An overly ripe tomato will begin sprouting, so excited it is for more life, so intent to be part of this world, trellising wildly. For every time in this life I have thought of dying, let me yield that much fruit in my next, skeleton drooping under the weight of my own vivacity as I spread to take more of this air, this fence post, this forgiving light. Thank you.
Those are so brilliant. I love how those poems move. And I keep thinking about that line now about eating only the unborn. That's just Doug and Liz and Natasha. I'm just so happy to be here, and thank you, Sophie and Zibby, for hosting. I was so excited when this bookstore opened because I can walk here, which is a huge treat in LA. I'm going to read 5 poems from Lying In. Which came out in April. And lying in is usually a term that refers to the postpartum period and sort of when the mother and infant have a chance to bond with each other. But because I was on prolonged bed rest for 2 pregnancies, the term came to speak to the entire journey, sort of eternally, of entering motherhood and sort of refinding myself, actually, because also there was the pandemic, and we all know what that was, but going inward. In a lot of ways. So I'm going to start with a poem that I actually wrote while on bed rest. A lot of the poems are not written during it, but after it. But this one, in that sort of suspended present tense, I had the chance to sort of think about my past childhood self and also imagine having a child. So this poem takes place on a playground, which is a place you sort of don't go to unless you're a child or with a child. You've been on Earth so long already. All my life, all I've wanted was to be myself and someone else. Not theirs, but them. My shame about this greed made me hesitant with other children. I wanted what they wanted, but apart. I tried to make it, spooned what I could into shallow mental dishes I stacked all night and poured through my neediest hole, which opens only for medicine or extreme misunderstanding. My teeth browned from too much thirst too late. My eyes bulged from noticing what I wasn't meant to be. There was a playground I went to and can't take you. The first thing I did daily was look for a place to hide or flee.
There were plenty of gates and wide enough trees, but I stayed off-center, just beyond the sprinkler's range. The others played until they snacked around me. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they looked consoled by what they couldn't have. No, not now. The boundary of things, the boundary of time. I wished this for you. Come soon, to be withheld. They were so freely asking for more world. And I should say that the child that came out of that is sitting there, his first reading, and we'll see. Okay, so then this one also for him. It's a slightly tailored reading tonight, but also because Liz requested it, and there's a line that I have to try to emphasize a little more this time. Liz always gives me really good notes. Okay, this is called Moses, New York, and it was written the first time I went back. I'm from New York, so after this long bed rest, I was able to actually go back home for the first time with this child. It felt like a kind of large swath of time between being there before, sort of just as a writer in the world, and then being there wanting to still be a writer in the world and with a new baby. So, Moses, New York. There was a boat on the pond, but no water. The water had sacrificed itself for your brutal thirst. Goodbye, cowboys. Goodbye, not knowing to speak. The boat is ready for me, baby. Enough with the reeds and the motherless. One singular horn will turn your face purple. A leaf blower may take your breath away. But the boat here is always and human. It floats on nothing. All the surfaces for floating and reflecting are gone. What good is what passes through us but clouds? There is a branch overhead, as if there were birds, and I would rather show you than go. I'm going to skip to the last section of the book. If you want to know what happens in the middle, you have to get a copy. And this poem is also actually from that same trip back to New York. It's for a creature that I know exists in LA as well, but I know them from New York, and they're a creature I do not like much, which is the cockroach. So this poem, when you have a baby, there's all this like sterility and like sterilizing everything, being really careful with the head. And that was the stage of new motherhood I was in. So when I saw my first cockroach after going back, it was like, it multiplied into this poem. Roach. The quickness of living, the quickness of wanting to kill something. Forget dreams, they attack me, and I welcome their landings as I'd welcome a gas mask filled with all our unsayable thoughts. Kiss me again without being asked, or asking if I still love. How to possess an exoskeleton, earth kitchen, shiny brown God's house, guts hollowed. I don't know what marriage means at 2 a.m. with 6 or 7 roaches vying for my mouth and other openings. If someone handed me a microscope, I might wake up. A microphone, I might stop and listen. If you're not breathing on your own by the middle of this lifetime, it isn't worth the privilege of lifting your feet. I made you. I make to lay myself out like a glue trap, safe. The exterminator says they are checking out the new smell of our baby in the holy sliver where our bodies don't touch. I don't think he would hurt them now that he understands them. I don't think you would hurt me, though I've killed you many times either. And then I'll read 2 more. This poem is sort of a return to reflecting on my own childhood. Also, during this period of time, I lost 2 really important poets, the poet Max Ritvo and Lucy Brock-Roydo, who were really, really dear to me. And, in the isolation and strangeness of new motherhood and bed rest, I felt almost closer to the dead than to my living community. So it starts with that. What are the chances? I go home to my dead. Try to want less the communion with my closest candle. Forget the fire. I have done fire. I haven't burned anything without planning. There is a man that stays away in me. He has already missed most of my life. He never finds words and is either too old or too young. Try to go back to shy smiles, slow appetite, a dress that floats up on a bus through the daydreams of strangers, with a lantern, that kind of child. Was it mine, my daydream awareness? Even then, it was the awareness that made me more despicable. Some were wrongful, I'm sure they did want more than to pinch my cheeks and rode the elevator just to find me. And some were caretakers, as they claimed, if only I had let them adore me. And then the last poem I will read is the last poem of the book. It's a return to romantic love after not only the deprivation of bed rest, but also sharing this new kind of love for children. Desire. It is for you I put the children to bed. Or come, I will keep the house awake for you. The floor is fluttering with tongues. I step through and you step after me, laughing. These are toys. Isn't it obvious how we've changed? I have no more use for pure feeling. You escape directly behind my head. Little vitrines in the closed museums not being looked at. I would die to be their objects. The children left me. You say they came. What could you possibly do for my body when I am in two separate rooms, breathing? Thank you.
I'm so thankful to be here. This bookstore is beyond cute. Like, I really love this space, and I definitely want to get some swag. Like, I love those hoodies. And thank you to Liz, Natasha, and Elizabeth. Like, yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I have a 14-month-old, so every time I'm out in the world and I don't have like a full backpack, like, and like binkies on, well, I do have binkies in my family. But yeah, if I don't have like that unlocked, like I feel very free. I think I'm gonna set a clock because, as people who know me know, I'm mad long-winded, so let me not talk forever in respect to space. But I'm going to read a couple poems from the first book to kind of set things off, especially the second poem I'm going to read will set us off for the second book, and then I think I'll read like 2 or 3 from there, and then we'll get into it. But again, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I always like to say the Jay-Z quote, right? You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I appreciate it. All right, here we go. I can run 5 miles, but I can't get to the other side of my mind. I've always been the type to hold a hornet in my fist. Numb is another word for fed up. I pull nose hairs to cry. Love to me is the vine strangling the locust tree. Tell me to take a stand, I'll have a seat. Show me heaven's cliffs, and I'll leap. I'm a June bug, and it's September. My lips hate one another, so I can't shut up. I like to read this poem because it's kind of where my second book started, I believe. The only thing you need to know for this, my dad fell victim to the crack epidemic of the 80s. I like to use that language because it has more sympathy. When we talk about the opioid crisis and the meth crisis, we have so much sympathy in our voice. But when my dad and all the people in the 80s fell victim to that crisis, we called them felons. So that's kind of important. And then my mom had multiple sclerosis. She passed when I was 8. She was a paraplegic most of my life. So this one's called The Cripple and the Crackhead. If there's a way, a proper way, to lift your damp, naked ex-wife out of the bathtub, he guesses this is it. Folding one cracked, slackened arm under her legs, the other above the small of her back. Once, there were women with ice-pick eyes and sin grins, the ones he slept with while she slept in their bed alone. But now he's here. Cracked somersaults in his veins, but he's here. Her hair wet and black, dripping off the back of his hand. The sound of this moment is not the blues, not a plea, but a testimony. Her lips touch his cheek as he carries her. And this instant is wide and round. It's their son's eyes when he sees that kiss. So my dad was a DJ in the late 70s and early 80s. So I decided to title each one of these poems after a song he liked to spin at the time. And the only other thing you need to know for this is, it's kind of a prequel to Testify. This is kind of a typical coming of age story, Bill Dong's Vermont first book. And so this is kind of the story of how my parents got together. The other thing that's really cool is that Liz made a lot of these poems like Mad Doper in workshop back in the day at USC. So it's really cool to read them in front of you now. All right, I'll just start from the top and we'll see how far we can get. Yeah, I won't give much more. But oh yeah, the year that you'll hear in each title isn't the year that the song came out. Again, it's the narrative action of the poem. First one's called Let's Get Small, 1986. Same scream since the night before. She locks herself in the bathroom. He holds up the bathroom door with his back. Today's her birthday. Another job gone, the song of another woman all over his lips, caught. She could taste it. She screams, he screams, they scream. They scream, he screams, she screams. She screams, he screams, their scream. The same scream they began with, the same scream they'll end with, but really it's older than that, deeper than that, and oh, so very black. The same scream since the Middle Passage, since slavery, since Reconstruction, since Jim Crow, since the Great Migration, since redlining, since civil rights. So many screams slicing love. Music, stitches, forgiveness inside a drum. He walks to the record player, puts on their song, the times 4/4, hard on the downbeat staccato. Something to dance to, something to survive through, something to die to. The bathroom door sighs open, nothing but a mouth full of silence. So I think I'll just read two more to stay within the time. And yeah, it was kind of funny thinking about grief or sexy. And I don't really know how I can play with either one of those because mostly I live on Sad Street a lot of times. But I do think that I might find something that gets kind of close to sexy. Let's see. And then the last poem in here. I have so many bookmarks. Here we go. Yeah. And you'll see what sexy means to me. It's kind of dark still at the end. Here we go. Toast to the Fool, 1983. They kissed as if each other's mouth was a cure for a disease they both carried for so long they forgot they had it. A disease no doctors could spot, a sickness that was beyond the eyes of their cousins, aunties, their grandmas, their grandpas, their mamas. There, they both didn't have no daddies. They kiss as if the kiss would be the last thing they would do with their lives, as if the horns of the inn were loud in their ears, the ground shifting below them, about to take them forever under. They both always knew about the ends of things. The lastness of last, always. A dead daddy is a long, long, long song. They kissed as if they were free, as if the color of their skin didn't scar a target around their bodies, as if the law could make them crawl, the police with their guns drawn, their bodies sacred and safe instead of scarce and sacrilegious. They kiss, they kiss, they kiss, they kiss, as if music saves, as if love saves, because it does. Let's hope it does. It does, it does, it saves. It doesn't. This will be the last one. It's the last poem in the book. And like with Testify, I kind of wanted to leave it a little light because, again, I live on Sad Bastard Street so often. And so, yeah, this is Time Will Reveal in 1987. Nobody asked her what she wanted for her birthday, so she figured nobody would do anything for her because nobody even said anything about her birthday. So she was so surprised when she opened a door and there he stood, cake tilted facing towards her, her favorite cousin Lonnie, Aunt Jessie and Mama, and silly Teddy there too. Damon counted to 3 and they all broke out into song. Thanks so much, guys.
Books available to buy at the front. This can help you out here, and then the poets are here if you'd like to get your copy signed.
That silence is too much. It's like last